Hello and welcome to the next instalment in the motorcycle ride from Creswick to Daylesford in the northwestern part of Victoria. This clip will actually make it to Daylesford and then beyond, heading towards the town of Ballan, B-A-L-L-A-N. Ballan is how the Victorians pronounce it. And we won't quite reach Ballan by the end of this clip, but we'll certainly have passed through Daylesford, so you'll get a chance to see what it looks like. And again, get a chance to look at the roads and the scenery and so on. Now, what I want to talk about today is to do with reality TV, and you wonder what that's got to do with motorcycling. Well, I'll get to that. One of my sons who lives at home is very fond of watching those things like Highway Patrol, Motorcycle Cops and so on. And the other night he was watching one that was to do with Victoria Police. Now, what I'm about to say and what I'm about to comment on is not either a justification or an apology or a criticism of the Victorian Police. It's just to talk about incidents that I saw in this program that the Victoria Police had to deal with and my comments on them. You might just notice then that a fellow in a Kawasaki Voyager, Vulcan Voyager, passed me. That's my other son, the one who lives in Victoria, and the bike he's riding is the one I used to own before I bought the Spider that I have now. Okay, so let's get to this reality TV program and the Victoria Police. In this program that I watched, there were three incidents that sort of grabbed my attention. The first of those was a woman who was driving an unlicensed vehicle. An unregistered vehicle. Now, I'm not sure what caused the police officer to pull her over in the first place, and maybe that's not relevant, but and I'm not a lawyer. I should say that at the beginning. I'm not a lawyer, so my comments are just observations on what I saw in the program and what I understand to be the state of affairs at the moment. So this woman's driving along in her car. For some reason, the police officer, his suspicions are aroused, and he calls in the number plate, and it comes back with the vehicle being unregistered. So he pulls the woman over and he gives her a stern talking to and asks her, does she understand that the registration's expired and so on, and she claims that she didn't. He asks her how much it is. She says something like $600. And he says to her, well, the vehicle's unregistered, you can't drive it, I can't let you drive it home, you can't drive it anywhere from here because it's an unregistered vehicle. You're going to get a $741 fine for driving an unregistered vehicle, and if you do drive this vehicle again and you get pulled up, you'll get another $741 fine. So he gives her, as I said, a stern talking to, gives her infringement notice or fine or ticket or whatever you want to call it, and he drives a little bit further up the road and waits to see what she does. Now, because of cars coming towards him in the glare in his mirrors, he can't actually see what she does, but he suspects that she might have ignored his advice and driven off in the car anyway. So he waits a little while, then he goes back to where she was, and the car's not there, drives around the block a little bit, and eventually he comes across her again. So he pulls her over and gives her another stern talking to, carries on about how he doesn't like being lied to and he doesn't like people being dishonest when he's given them a warning, and gives her another fine for riding or driving an unregistered vehicle and a fine for failing to obey a police instruction or something, and she ends up with something like $1,500 worth of fines for a $600 registration. Now, the issue with the unregistered vehicle is this. In Australia, you pay a fee which is called the registration fee, and that's basically a fee that allows you to drive your car on the roads that your taxes are already paid for. In New South Wales, you pay a road tax. I assume you pay a similar tax in Victoria. You pay GST, and then you have to pay another fee, and this is for the CTP, or compulsory third-party insurance, or in New South Wales it's called Green Slip. In Victoria it's called TAC or something. Traffic Accidents Commission, I think that stands for. But it's the insurance that you pay that covers third parties who might be involved in an accident as a result of your driving. So it doesn't cover the repair of your car, it covers other people, such as passengers in your own car or people in another vehicle who may be injured as a result of an accident where you have deemed to be at fault. Now, you might argue, well, I don't need that insurance. Shouldn't have to have that insurance, and I don't need it. You would be unsuccessful in making that argument because the law says you have to have it. But you cannot say that other people don't need it because you don't know their circumstances, and you cannot take away other people's rights like that. So another person who may be catastrophically injured as a result of a driving accident that you're the driver at fault, if you're driving an unregistered vehicle, that insurance policy doesn't exist, and therefore they're not covered. And so should they be injured, whether it's catastrophically or otherwise, should they suffer a loss of income or something like that, those costs will not be met by the insurance company that's provided you with that third-party insurance because you don't have it. And that's the issue with driving an unregistered vehicle. You must have this. In New South Wales it's called CTP, or compulsory third-party insurance. In other states it's called different things, but it's essentially the same thing. Some states it's built into the registration fee, like in Tasmania it's called MAIB, which stands for Motor Accident Insurance Board, and when you get your insurance, when you get your registration renewal, it tells you how much that premium is and you just pay it. But you have to have that insurance to protect third parties, that is other people who may be injured as a result of your driving. So that was the first incident, and you might look at it and think, well, it was a bit unfair to target her twice. But he had reasonable suspicion, I suppose, to think that she would ignore his first instruction not to drive the car. He told her she had to either call a taxi or an Uber or a friend. When he pulled her over the second time, she said she couldn't find a cab, she didn't have an Uber, and she didn't have any friends or something. And so, as I say, she was fined twice for the same offence. As I said, I'm not here to apologise for the Victorian Police or explain their actions. They're more than capable of doing that themselves. The second incident involved a person who was driving a vehicle who was disqualified from driving. Now, there could be lots of reasons why that happens. If you fail a roadside breath test or a roadside drug test, in some states there's an automatic suspension of your licence. Depending on the range of the random breath test, if you're over a certain number of, if you're over 0.08 or whatever it is in your state, your licence may be automatically suspended. If you fail a roadside drug test and the second test confirms it, your licence is automatically suspended in some states. A disqualification could be imposed by the court as a result of you speeding excessively. For example, if you were doing 150 in a 50 zone, the court might impose a disqualification period on you. If you're a disqualified driver, it means you're not allowed to drive any vehicle at all. Now, even though the vehicle is registered and insured, the fact that you are an unlicensed driver at the time means that insurance policy, I suspect, would be void. And the insurance company would say, well, the person driving the car was not licensed to drive that car. In fact, they were disqualified from driving, and therefore the policy doesn't apply. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but that would be how I'd understand it. And so when you drive, if you are unlicensed or disqualified from driving, you again are putting yourself and other people at risk. Again, you might argue that thing about, well, I'm prepared to take that risk myself. No court will recognise your right to make that risk because they've said you are in breach of the law by driving while disqualified, but you cannot assume that other people are willing to take that risk. And so the court would say, I imagine, that you are in breach of the law and you will be subsequently fined again and suspended from driving for a further period of time. That is for the protection of other people who are on the road, the third parties who may be injured as a result of your negligence or bad driving or whatever. Now, the third incident involved a vehicle that was literally held together with duct tape. The police officer who was following this vehicle noticed a whole bunch of duct tape around the rear bumper and tail lights and so on, and so he pulled the car over and then he walked around it and saw there was duct tape just about everywhere. The front bumper was held on with duct tape, the lights were held in with duct tape, the bonnet was held down with duct tape and so on. He looked over this vehicle and he declared on the spot the vehicle was unroadworthy. And so that means that vehicle cannot be driven. And the reason why your vehicle needs to be roadworthy is because, again, in order to get that compulsory third-party insurance, you must have a roadworthy vehicle. Now, in New South Wales, your vehicle needs to be inspected every year after it's 5 years old to make sure it is roadworthy. In other states, the only way you find out if it's roadworthy is if when you take it in for service and the mechanic says, well, you need new tyres or the brakes are no good or you need new wipers or whatever, or if a police officer pulls you over and says, well, your car's unroadworthy because the tyres are bald or because the lights don't work or whatever. The argument in New South Wales is at least once a year your vehicle is checked for roadworthiness and you can be sure on the day that you got that inspection done that it was roadworthy. So if you're driving a vehicle that is unroadworthy, you are of course putting yourself at risk. The brakes might fail, the bumper bar might fall off and then you run over it and destabilise your car, or if the car behind you runs over it and destabilises that car and causes an accident. So, if your vehicle is unroadworthy and it is required to stop at a certain point because of a red light or a traffic accident or whatever the reason is, and it's unable to, then of course you may injure yourself. Worse, you may injure somebody else. And again, that injury to other people is the core reason why there is so much concern. You cannot take away the right of someone else to be protected from injury by an insurance policy or by, driving a roadworthy vehicle and so on. So I guess the message is, if your vehicle's not roadworthy, and you'll know if you keep putting duct tape upon duct tape that your vehicle's not roadworthy, don't drive it. If your car's not registered, then register it before you drive it. In most states you can do that online, and it all happens fairly quickly. In states where you don't need an inspection, you just pay the fees and the vehicle is registered and roadworthy, or registered. If you're a suspended driver, don't drive your vehicle while you're suspended, because not only will you incur further fines and possibly even longer suspensions, you are putting other people on the road at risk, and you don't have the right to do that. Now, again, you might be narky at the police for pulling people over for what you consider to be trivial matters, but the police's job is to enforce the law. I'm not apologising for them, I'm not excusing them, I'm just telling you that's what I saw in the program. And the programs, I'm sure the people who produce them think they have an educational value as much as a entertainment value. And the police, they would argue, well, this is our job. We're told this is the law. Our job is to enforce the law, and that's what we do. So, again, don't drive if you're unlicensed or disqualified. Don't drive if your vehicle's not insured or not registered, and don't drive if your vehicle's not roadworthy. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the scenery. If you enjoyed the ride through Daylesford, I hope the video had some educational value for you, or some information value for you.